Hi, I'm Johanna Gretschel, the managing editor of The Striker Texas. I'm super excited to host this panel today on the unionization in soccer and the professional soccer world. Um, Very excited to be here for the 2022 edition of the Texas Soccer Summit, hosted again by The Striker Texas. If you haven't subscribed, make sure to check us out. It's your home for all things soccer from MLS, NWSL, USL, youth leagues, and more in the great Lone Star State. But today, really excited to talk about the unionization of soccer. Some really special guests from all the parts of the soccer world. We've got Katie Naughton, a current player rep for the Houston Dash in the NWSL, who's part of their historic collective, first ever collective bargaining agreement. And we also have Bobby Perez, the chief legal officer and general counsel for the San Antonio Spurs organization. And we will be joined in a few minutes as well by Ethan Finley, currently of Austin FC, a former players rep for Minnesota United. So thank you guys so much for joining me here today. Um, Maybe we could start off by giving a quick intro of yourselves, a little more than the brief one I just gave. Katie, I guess if we could start with you.
Yeah. Hi. My name's Katie Naughton. I am a center back for the Houston Dash. This will be my third season with them and my seventh season in the league. I was current or previously with the Chicago Red Stars, and that's actually where I'm from, is Chicago. So it was fun to get to play in front of my friends and family. But I really do love Houston, and it's like a second home to me now. And I'm just really excited to get the ball rolling for this next season.
And you were maybe could you give us a little bit of a background on your role with the NWSL CBA?
Oh yeah. So this is my I think sixth year as an NWSL player rep. So I've been in on most of the calls regarding the CBA and other things that have gone on in the league in the past few years. It's been really exciting that we now have a CBA that's been ratified by both the players and the league. It's a historic moment for us, and it's really going to be, I think, a game changer moving forward, and it's going to really shift the whole landscape of women's soccer in a positive direction. So it's really an amazing thing to be a part of, and I can't wait to see it implemented.
Yeah, really excited to dig into that with you in a few minutes. Bobby, would you mind giving us a quick rundown of your background?
Of course, first off, Johanna, and thanks to you and Stryker for giving us the opportunity to show up. Katie, great to meet you virtually. My name is Bobby Pettis. I'm the Chief Legal Officer and General Counsel for Spurs Sports Entertainment. We're a family of companies with an NBA team, a USL Second Division team, men's team, and formerly we had an American Hockey League franchise and a WNBA franchise, all of now which are collectively bargained. And from an overview perspective, I've been practicing law for probably 3 decades, and the sat on our league labor committee as we worked through a collective bargaining agreement with the USL Players Association, and which I'm glad to report we finalized not too long ago. And this is our first season with the new agreement in place.
Yeah, it is a pretty cool time in the soccer world because all of these new CBAs have been ratified in the past, really the past 12 months, 13 months. And of course, we're doing this panel today, and there was really huge news from the U.S. Women's National Team side of things with their big settlement with the U.S. Soccer Federation. Of course, there's more bombshell news, the day we're doing this panel. But a little background, I guess, if people hadn't seen that. They agreed, US Soccer agreed to pay $24 million, mostly in back pay, and agreed to equalize earnings for the men's and women's national teams moving forward. And so that still has to be uh, approved and ratified by the players' associations. But Katie, what was your initial reaction to seeing that news this morning?
Yeah, I was thrilled. I mean, I know the girls on the national team have worked their butts off for years to try and get this done, and I think the documentary entitled LFG, kind of highlighted the struggles that they've gone through in order to get this lawsuit sorted. And it's just a really exciting time in women's soccer that we're finally getting the recognition I think we deserve. And, this is just a precedent that's going to start to set standards across the board. And hopefully, the league starts to feel the effects of that as well.
Do you think this decision, will have after effects for you and other NWSL players? Maybe in your next set of negotiations.
100%. Yeah, I think, the national team is pretty much the blue chip standard that all of us try to strive towards. And I think having them at this level now being paid equal to the men is just going to empower us to fight for even more in the next round of CBA negotiations and maybe even before then. So I'm just really excited for, the future generations coming up in the NWSL and in the women's national team to finally get the payoff that we deserve.
And throughout, this has been a 6-year process for them. How did that inspire you in your own fight, being part of the players union?
Yeah, I think, they set such a great example for us in terms of really sticking to your guns and not backing down, even in times of adversity. Luckily, we didn't have to fight for as long as they did to get our CBA ratified, but I think it just goes to show that these things don't happen overnight. It's something that you have to chip away at day in and day out, and it takes a lot of time and effort and energy, and there's a lot of moving parts, but if you're all on the same page and working towards a collective goal, anything is possible. So it was really great to see the, I guess, best players in the world really shine a light on things that needed to be changed and empowered us then in the league level to do the same.
And some of these women on the national team. I'm assuming you've played in the league for a long time. You've been on national level teams before. Were you communicating with some of them throughout this, getting advice? In your own negotiation process.
Yeah, so it was kind of strange in the beginning of our process. There was kind of a separation because they were still allocated with the women's national team and US soccer. So they weren't necessarily in on all of the meetings, but I know that they were getting feedback about what was happening and the progress we were making. But towards the end of the negotiations, we actually did finally have the ability to allow them into those conversations, which was huge because they had already gone through this process several times and they definitely had insight that we wanted. So yeah, on that, we kind of just shared notes and saw, these are the things that we are working on. These are the things they're working on. And hopefully, it's a symbiotic relationship and both of us can, just continue to grow the league in the positive direction. And I'm so happy for them because they've gone through so much to try and get this done. And it's just going to be, one stepping stone moving forward, but it's really going to be something that's going to completely, I think, overturn what has previously been done with US soccer in a positive direction.
And Bobby, I don't know if do you have any thoughts or opinions on, this kind of historic moment for U.S. women's soccer right now? I know this might be a little
Oh,
outside of your
okay.
purview in San Antonio, but
No, absolutely. I think it enhances the sport. It develops the game that we're all working very hard, to make better for everybody here domestically. And so as the professionalization increases across the country on both the men's and women's sides, I just think it makes the end product better. And when you have some fair playing fields for players and their athletes, and the ones today and the ones in the future, I think they'll benefit from more. It's certainly exciting and it keeps the future bright.
and Katie, I'm kind of curious to hear how you first got involved in this process. I'm sure it ended up being a lot more of a time commitment maybe than you thought it was at the beginning.
Yeah, so I actually first started out as a rep in Chicago my second year. I was the alternate rep and kind of just observed and saw how things kind of went down in the inner workings of things. And then the third year in Chicago is when I became a full player rep. So then I was in that role for a few years, and it was just kind of slow moving at that point. But it was right after the Challenge Cup in 2020 when we were asked to find volunteers that wanted to be part of the collective bargaining committee. And myself and two other girls on the team volunteered, and that's kind of when everything started. It's been about a 1.5 year long process, but it's been extremely rewarding now that we have it done. But it was daunting. I don't think we realized exactly what we were getting ourselves into. But yeah, it was, I think, over 400 hours on Zoom is what our executive director relayed to us, which is insane.
I remember
But
seeing that number. Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to be on Zoom any more than I have to these days. Just, I'm scarred, but it was well worth it. And yeah, that's kind of how it all started, was just a volunteer process.
Yeah. I mean, with that amount of time poured into this effort, and a lot of, I'm sure, emotional strain, mental stress, how did you manage that with still keeping up your performance on the field?
Yeah, it was definitely a balancing act, I would say, maintaining my sanity through this last season, which had other issues, I guess you could say, that we had to kind of navigate through. That was unfortunate, but needed to be done. And I think it's just maintaining, a good mental health regimen and also physical health. Obviously, you need to keep your body fit in order to be able to play, and then also having a good support system with friends and family. So I really leaned heavily on my friends and family during those tough times, but it was well worth it, and I'm glad I was able to stick it out and make sure that I got the job done on and off the field to the best of my ability.
And before you guys started negotiating the CBA, what were your roles and responsibilities like as a player rep before that?
Yeah, so you kind of just you're a mediator, I guess. You're the one that's the middleman between the league and the teams in terms of the communication, and you're just opening up a dialogue and hopefully relaying the message in a way that the players understand, and uh, trying to set up player dues so that the players association can stay afloat for the jobs that they need to do with our executive board. And other than that, it's just kind of keeping tabs on things and making sure that everyone's aware of the things that are going on the league side, and then vice versa. So it was just trying to keep everyone on the same page.
And what drew you to taking on this kind of role?
I think I've always been in a leadership role throughout my career. When I was playing at Notre Dame, I was a 3-year captain there, and kind of knew how that role would work within the league and the teams I was on. So I just naturally stepped into that role, and yeah, it was something that I enjoy to take on. I like to be in the know and understand what's going on, so I can best then tell my teammates what is going on, and hopefully it's from a place of understanding.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that contributes to a larger sense of, I don't know, maybe accountability to your teammates or just a greater sense of, yeah, pride in what you guys are all working for. When the CBA negotiations did start, what did that look like schedule wise for you? Because I've heard that number tossed out before, the 400 hours of Zoom meetings. Was this like in the evenings after practice? Like, were you up late on Zoom? What was that like?
Yeah, honestly, it was all over the place. I think to start, we tried to schedule biweekly Zoom meetings with ourselves, just to kind of have an overview of what we wanted to accomplish within those first few months. And then once we started to get to the halfway point and past that, I think it was probably 1 to 2 Zoom meetings a week. And then at the very end, it was every day. We were on Zoom every day trying to get this CBA hammered out in time for this season, for preseason actually. So yeah, it was kind of whenever people could come on, they would, and then someone would kind of fill in if someone wasn't able to make it. But it was definitely a a roller coaster of emotions and timing. So we made it work to the best of our ability and just got on when we could and shared our insights and had input when we thought was necessary. And kudos to our lawyers because they put in so much hard work into this for us and really guided us through and showed us what we needed to do and where we needed to stand hard on things. And we wouldn't have gotten it done without their help.
And how many of you were on this committee together?
I think it was 33 players. And then we had our 3 lawyers and our executive director, Megan Burke, was also in on all the calls too. So it was, yeah, I think just around 40 people, which is amazing. And I think we all contributed in some way, which was even better.
What are some of the challenges of working with that many voices, representing so many different teams? Just the idea of getting all into agreement with that many people, it seems like a lot of work, right? What were some of
Yeah,
the
I
challenges
mean,
that big?
definitely, we definitely faced some challenges. We definitely didn't agree on everything, which I think is natural when you have that many people in one Zoom room together. But yeah, we were really good at listening at one another and hearing each other's opinions and perspectives. And I think one thing we did really well was have people from different backgrounds and have different levels of experience. We had people that have been in the league since the inception. We had rookies. We had someone like me who's kind of in the middle, different positions, different markets. So we kind of tried to get a really well-rounded group of people that had differing perspectives and viewpoints so that when we did come to the table, we presented all these different angles that we would try and tackle. And I think that was really powerful. And I think the league was able to see things that they might not have seen or that they might have missed had we not all come together collectively with, differing viewpoints.
I'm curious, Bobby, uh, all Katie's describing all of this happening on Zoom calls. And actually, in my previous job, we had a unionization process where we were in Zoom calls, and I left before that was finalized. But it is a strange dynamic. So I'm curious, from your perspective, do you think, how do you think the pandemic has affected, I guess, employees' ability to unionize? And do you think that's just in your experience with a lot of different organizations? I don't know. Do you see any differences in the past few years?
Really, really interesting time for everybody. I think if we use our example on the USL side, we started with live meetings in 2019. The Players Union was recognized probably at the end of 2019. And then, of course, the pandemic came about. And just as you're starting those formative agreements, right, then all of a sudden the world kind of changes and we're trying to figure out how to keep the process going. And so I think the unique thing to our labor negotiation was it started live, transitioned to all virtual, but during that time, we're bargaining for working conditions in a COVID environment. And if you just, in Johanna, I know you're from Texas, but if you just take Texas as an example, I would venture to guess that any given municipality had, like San Antonio, we probably had a combination of state, city, and county orders, 150 orders kind of dictating on how you gather, play, train, and execute. And when you're going through labor negotiations, it's working with the group like Katie describes. You have to have a good working relationship to figure out how you're going to advance the effort. Because at the end of the day, everybody wants to get to that finishing line, getting to an agreement. And so it was definitely unique. I think we all learned a lot. And and I'll echo Katie's statement about Zoom fatigue, but I'll tell you, for us as an organization, we've kind of transitioned to a hybrid environment on a permanent basis. And so I think this Zoom world is something that will continue on in the foreseeable future. And it's got a lot of upside. It's got some challenges, but the upside it also has some real good takeaways that I think we've implemented as a company, and we'll continue to work on them.
Oh, certainly. I mean, something like this conference that we're able to do virtually, it'd be a much bigger endeavor if we were all, asking you guys to come out to Austin. So Certainly have experienced that Zoom fatigue, but it also allows you to do a lot more. Um, did you feel that the pandemic and just different working conditions did that change what players were asking for? I don't know if you can comment on that, or was it always the same?
I think it probably changed from both sides. And if
Yeah.
you guys can visualize, right, and from a USL perspective, a company that the employee obligations didn't go away, the maintenance of the facilities obligations didn't go away. As I look at our facility right now, it's the 9,000 seat outdoor stadium and 13 full size fields and adjacencies. So that operational requirement didn't expire. Yet we're having games or not, right? There was a period there were no games at all, and trying to figure out how you're still operating. And so that was a challenge for everybody. The uncertainty that players had of what was next. We certainly, it was always important to understand that position. And then the uncertainty from the operator side. And then all the partners that the operators have. And then the fans, and then your local governments and your local communities. So definitely a challenge, and in lots of matches with no fans because the local rules dictated it. And so that, I think, made us all appreciate a lot of where we came from, and I think it made for a better discussion at the bargaining table on everybody understanding what the challenges were.
I mean, certainly there were some financial struggles, I mean, across the board in a lot of sports, right? With fans not being able to attend and um, I would say just loss of income, right? Like, did that affect, from you guys are kind of representing both sides of, a collective bargaining agreement. I just want, does that give the players less like leverage, if the front office is bringing in less money or if certain teams are maybe going through like budget cuts, just across the board the past 2 years? That's the reality, right?
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and start. I think it absolutely was an issue as we went through the negotiation session, just the state of the world, right?
Mhm.
If you look at the live event business, and I think of our companies, or from our music business to our various sports businesses, no one was operating, and the leaders in our company, we along with the support of our ownership group, we made a decision not to you know enter into any reduction in force. And so just maintaining, those staffing levels with those revenue challenges was definitely a juggling exercise. And but by the same token, I think that as we went through the bargaining process, the USLPA recognized that. They recognized that everybody's goal was, trying to figure out how we can all get healthy and come out stronger than when we started, and that unified goal of having some business certainty. I think, as Katie explained, how they handled their negotiations, we were kind of split up in two groups, but representative groups of the whole. And so our group of seven represented every single team in the USL, and the USLPA, their group of 7 or 8, represented 600, 700 players, and trying to figure out how we're communicating, making decisions in an efficient manner, and trying to come to some consensus.
Katie, did you feel the financial challenges of the pandemic affected maybe any leverage that you guys had?
Yeah, I think for us, our lawyers put it really eloquently and kind of gave us an example as, how much of the pie do you want to take and for what? So I think like during COVID, we really needed to consider all of the factors that it had affected. And obviously we won't see the books and, the financials that are specific to each market, but we knew that the league was losing money. So, we wanted to get certain things, but we knew we couldn't be too greedy because we wanted to work harmoniously with the league and make sure that it stayed afloat so that we did have, somewhere to play. But yeah, I mean, I think for our sake, we did push back on some things that we were, not going to budge on. And one of those for us was our minimum compensation. And luckily the league was able to, work with us to get to a point where we both felt comfortable. But as a whole, I mean, I think the league is moving in a positive direction, and hopefully the revenue will just continue to grow for us, and kind of make up for lost time with what happened during the COVID year, and just hopefully, we're working towards growth.
Yeah. And again, I don't know if you can say, but I'm curious, are there things that were left on the table that, maybe in a couple of years when negotiations are happening again that you guys would fight for, given the league is in a healthy place?
Yeah, so one of the things that is in the CBA that we haven't hammered out for certain yet is a broadcast deal, and getting some revenue from that and it's back into the players' hands. So right now, that's not until the third year of the CBA negotiations, and we're just kind of holding out hope that the league is able to secure a broadcast deal that would make the league profitable, and therefore we would find some of the profit sharing and revenue sharing with that. So I think that's just one example. There are several within the CBA, but I think that's the one that sticks out the most, and makes the most sense to talk
Yeah.
about.
And Bobby, from your perspective, what are some of the challenges of, trying to make the players happy, the people who, they're the reason this league is here, right? Versus, convincing owners, that they're going to get something out of it as well. What's that dynamic like for you?
No, great question. I think maybe a way to kind of review it from the owner's table and the team side is the clubs are looking for some economic certainty. And so I remember when we started the process, we were coming from a club that had three collectively bargained teams. And so annually, and we can forecast what those costs are on how we're managing that, and project and work towards those revenue goals in order to make it all work. And so I think as we approached those discussions, we were kind of operating with that lack of certainty. And I think the working condition was probably the biggest thing. It's important. I'd say it's important for all owners, but important for us. One of the things that we always focused on when we started. This is year 6 for us in the league, but when we started was making sure that it aligned with the values that we have in our company. We're a values-based entity, and making sure we're doing the things the right way is always important. So that cuts across all the organization, including on this product, making sure housing is there, making sure health insurance is there, making sure there's training opportunities for players for life after, because quite frankly, a lot of folks aren't in the system a long time, on the pitch side, and it's what's next. And I think when owners are collectively looking at that bigger picture, it really helped for a good discussion. And I think there was a lot of alignment on that. And how do you create that type of framework that provided that certainty to help you target and drive goals to meet those obligations? And then, of course, just the underlying part of sport, right? Being successful on the pitch is a fascinating, fun time, and it really makes that community part of what we all do just a great factor.
What are some of the differences between, going through this process with a USL soccer team versus, another sports league like the NBA?
I would say the biggest difference is time. When you look at the NBA, or even if you just the NBA is real mature, 2 decades, old. So that structure and the sophistication level is pretty high on both sides, and so it's well managed by the league at a real high level. But if you look at WNBA and I'd say American Hockey League, also have been around a long time. The collective bargaining agreements have been around a long time. So the exercise that I think Katie and I are talking about, that happened within the last 12 to 30 months, it's that very first impression. And so it'll take a while for these agreements to become mature. Katie talked about her renewal in 36 months. You know, the work that you take to get up to that level. So with time, and as the agreements become more mature, everybody learns a little bit on what was a good decision, what's effective, what's not effective. And I think there'll be things that the players and uh, investor groups will get together on and saying, hey, here's the list of things that didn't work. Can we agree to modify and make it better for everybody? So
Mhm.
I think that's the biggest difference. It's just a function of time. And things will get better, operations will get better, the ability to identify and complete a healthy after action review after every year of the first year will be helpful.
And I think you mentioned a couple just now, but what were some of the, the new player benefits that people in the USL received? I think you mentioned housing, or could you go into that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I think the main thing is consistency for all teams. And
Hmm.
so, we, at the end of the day, we now operate under you know, a soft cap for players. And so teams are required now to have a certain level of housing, a certain level of health coverage, and prior to the collective bargaining agreement, there were maybe some teams that didn't provide it equally across. And so, for a player's perspective, that expectation level that they can go out and earn a living, in a certain market, and just because they went from one team to the other, it didn't, wasn't detrimental. And I think those are the biggest things: those working conditions and that level of certainty for players and clubs.
So is there a minimum salary across the board, across all teams, or does it vary depending what market you're in?
There's a minimum and a max for all clubs
Okay,
that, and it's like all other caps. It's you know a calculation based on all those obligations that the team has for the benefit of the players.
gotcha. Um, and Katie, is housing included in your CBA for players?
Yes, so if you're a contracted player, you are provided with team housing, or if you opt not to utilize that team housing, you get a stipend, which is valued at the market you are in. So depends on where you
Okay,
are for how much the stipend would be. But yeah, it's better than what we had before. So that's good.
yeah. And what was that? Just nothing, or
No, like a lot of the teams did provide team
less?
housing, but
Yeah,
yeah, my I think first few years in the league, a lot of players had to live with host families, which is basically kind people that volunteer to open up their homes for players that are coming in that are not from that town or market. So obviously, it's not ideal being a professional athlete living in somebody else's home. So I think now that we have this moving forward, it's definitely setting a higher standard, which is great.
yeah. And you said your first few years in the league, you're from Chicago, you're playing in Chicago. So did you stay with family? Did you have your own place? What was your
I
situation
did.
like?
So my first 2 years, I lived at home, which was great. Love my family, but coming from college and having that independence, and then to go back living at home was definitely a reverse transition, I guess. So then the second 2 years I was in Chicago, or the last 2 years, I moved out and I lived in the city, which was amazing and a lot of fun. So I kind of got the best of both worlds, I guess. And now I'm in Houston, so I have an apartment now, no family.
It's a good step to take.
Yes,
And now it's easier. Yeah. What
for sure.
is the team housing like? Is there like a certain apartment complex that like all the girls will live in, or um
I think it depends on the market. For us in Houston, we're really fortunate. They put us up in some really nice apartment complexes. There's two main ones that we use. I won't name them just for anonymity purposes. But yeah, it's really nice here. Houston has done a really nice job of putting us up and providing us with really great accommodations.
Yeah, yeah. What so some of the girls who you maybe played with in Chicago who had to stay with the host family, what were some of the challenges that they talked about?
Yeah, I mean, privacy being the main one, I would say. They sometimes felt that they were expected to entertain or take care of the kids if there were kids in the household. Having lack of access to transportation, so sometimes the girls didn't have a car. They felt awkward having to ask the family to borrow the car. And then, sometimes safety too. Unfortunately, not every household was an ideal situation, and there were some safety hazards and risks that players should never have to encounter. So I think mitigating that altogether is definitely a step in the right direction, just to get players in the league, a good impression when they first join, so that they will
Yeah.
want to stay.
And sharing stories like that, was that a big part of some of these like preliminary talks that you guys had on Zoom?
Oh yeah, we had players come in from all over. Um, Sorry, my dog is playing with the bone. But yeah, so we had players come from all different markets that shared their personal experiences, and I think for some it was really hard to relive that. But I think the ownership and the league side needed to know in order to make the changes, and I think it was really eye opening for a lot of them to recognize that this was happening and they might not have even been aware. And yeah, I think it was very powerful.
Yeah. Um, did you looked at any other, were there any models of, I don't know, other leagues that you guys look to try to emulate? I know I mentioned the NBA earlier, obviously, one of the biggest leagues in the entire world. So it's not quite, the right place to look, right? I don't
Yeah,
know, did you guys
we
look at
did.
maybe what basketball was doing? Was there anything? Yeah.
Yeah, we looked at the WNBA. Obviously, they're our female counterpart in the basketball world, and then the MLS because they're also in the soccer world. But we did make sure that we weren't, just copying pasting because we have our own issues and our own, concerns in certain areas that we wanted to address, and we wanted to kind of have a blueprint of what that landscape and what that format looks like and the language that we were supposed to be using, but we wanted to make it our own as well. So we definitely kind of use it as a reference, but not as a placeholder, I guess.
Yeah. Um, and Bobby, I don't know if you could comment on this, but what's the player reaction been in the last few months since the CBA was ratified?
We just, our home opener is March 12th, and our training camp opened January 29th. And so we're just welcoming a lot of players back from last season, but we've got some new ones. And so, from watching them train this past weekend, they look fantastic. So, hopefully, everybody likes where we're headed and what's going on. I think from the player rep side, the general feedback is that everybody's glad that there's a deal done and everybody's moving forward. And so, I think that's definitely gets high marks. I think that was our goal for both sides, making sure we had something done uh, as soon as we could with all the uncertainties in our current environment. So I would
Yeah.
have to say it's positive.
And what is the general outlook for 2022? Do people feel that this season might look a little bit more like 2019, I guess, in terms of kind of moving on from the pandemic and crowds being back to normal and all that?
Well, we hope so. On the soccer side, we finished our season real strong. We ended up in the Western Conference Finals, and so our last two home playoff matches were sold out, well attended. Our road playoff match in Orange County sold out, well attended. That was great to see. As we look at our arena events, our music events, crowds are starting to trend better. We are still operating, as you well know, in Texas, lots of different rules, with respects to some things, or as a league. The USL still has a certain set of protocols, health and safety protocols, as does the NBA. Same for our G League team, which operates in Austin, Texas. And so we're all operating under a current health set of protocols. Will they go away, 100% this spring? My guess is not 100%, but I think we'll trend that way. And maybe by the time we get to the break in July, that maybe that's a good line where, hopefully everything is working out well from a health and safety side. Because at the end of the day, right, fan safety, player safety, team staff safety, all outweighs, some of the operational things that we all talk about.
Yeah. And Katie, for you, is there a sense of relief, I guess, in being able to move on from all this negotiating that you've been in and being able to solely focus on the product on the field and getting back to that?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a weight lifted off our shoulders. Just having accomplished this in the past year and a half, like I said, has been such a monumental achievement. But I think we are really excited just to get back on the field and focus on soccer and making sure that the right things get implemented in the right way. But yeah, I think we just want to produce the best product we possibly can on the pitch, and hopefully the CBA is a great way to help encourage us to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been really interesting to hear about the journey. I'm curious if there's anything I didn't ask that you wanted to mention about just that whole process here today. The platform is yours.
Yeah, I guess it was really exciting, and I think it did allow for organic relationships to be made as well. Like I was able to talk to girls on other teams that I might not have ever encountered outside of soccer. So it was cool to really get to know people on a personal level and not just a professional level. And same thing with the league side and the board of governors side. Like the people that Bobby would represent for us, like to get to see their perspective and hear things of why they make certain decisions in a certain way. I think it kind of shed light on things that we don't see as players and in other circumstances never would. So it was really exciting to kind of see the other side and work together to try and really make this the best possible relationship moving forward and hopefully gain some more transparency and trust between both of us so that it just continues to move in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting point there. I'm curious if there's anything either of you would like to ask the other one.
Well, Katie does remind me of just recently we've got two former USL players that work for us as full time employees. One on the IT side, one on our community side. And when I talk to them and engage with them on various topics, it's one of the things they've said, Katie, a couple of times. When they're in our offices proper, they're like, "Wow, as a player, I would have never realized so much went in to make these events go." And so it's great perspective, and same for us, right? We don't realize what those off hours are like when you're trying to mend your body and get ready to go back and try to prepare mentally and physically for even just a training session, and how challenging that can be when you're trying to stay on the 18 from week to week. And so I think that's certainly helpful as we have gone through it and learned from each other during this process. So definitely a good call out by Katie. I don't have any questions for Katie, but happy to answer. Katie, I do serve as our board of governor on the USL governing body, so it was always educational, engaging with my counterparts at the league level, and understanding their perspective, because everybody's market is different. My insurance costs in Texas are X, and somebody's insurance costs in California or New York is Y, and so it just really has an impact on how everybody's operating.
Is there anything that you'd like to ask Bobby?
No, I just wish you best of luck, and I hope you have a fantastic schedule the rest of this month and this season.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I don't have any questions that are coming to mind right now, but
Okay,
I appreciate your time and everything that you guys have put into this. So, yeah, this was really exciting.
cool. I just wanted to give you guys the opportunity just in case. But yeah, no, this has been really interesting, and it was really great to talk with both of you. And I guess as we wrap up here today, just a reminder that all the panels are going to be available to watch on the strikertexas.com. I think we just have one more panel left today, but yeah, really appreciate your guys' time, and I'm eager to watch the organizations perform in 2022. So it should be a really fun year, I think. So yeah,
Thank you both so
thanks so much,
much.
guys. Take
Yes, thank
care.
you guys. Really appreciate it.
Have a great day. We'll see y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.